Hey guys, what is cracking? It is Krakenation here, and I'm coming at you guys today to talk about the next installment of our competitive analysis and breakdown series for Generation 9. We're taking a look at every single Pokemon in Generation 9, all the new Pokemon of the Paldea region, try to see, what makes them tick in competitive play, and how can you build that Pokemon to maximize its potential usefulness to your team in a competitive Pokemon format. And if you are building against it, playing against it, or building around it, what should you be looking out for? Guys, I'm really excited to be doing these videos, so make sure you let me know down in the comment section what Pokemon you want to see next. But today we're going to be taking a look at Sandy Shocks, which is the alternate form of Magneton. I'm going to be honest, I think this thing design is hilarious and awesome, because if you ever have played with the magnets that have the sand, the iron sand or whatever, that they all shoot off of and are spiky, it kind of ends up looking like hair on this thing, and I just think this design is absolutely hysterical and creative for the electric ground typing. It's a typing we've seen before, speaking of which, in Stunfisk, and actually is a pretty decent typing for what it's worth, but unfortunately, to start off the bat here, I'm going to be a little negative because Sandy Shocks, Magneton here lost the ground typing, and the steel typing, and replaced it with ground. And ground is a very good type, don't get me wrong, but steel typing, as we know, is one of the best typings in the game, arguably the best defensive typing in the game. So just losing that ground type, that steel typing, is always going to be a little bit of a detriment to any Pokemon. But electric ground, still a good type. We've seen Pokemon like Stunfisk in the past be mildly competitive because of that really useful and unique typing. Photosynthesis, if you're not aware, is the ability for almost all these type of Pokemon. It basically under Sun, or if you're holding the booster energy, it's a one-time use. You get a 50% boost on switching to your highest base stat. Booster energy obviously working the first time you switch no matter what. Otherwise, this effect only applies under Sun. So it gives you a little bit of a boost if you're able to utilize that. So going ahead and taking a look at this thing's stats, it's got a pretty nice stat pool, 85, 97, 85 defenses. Obviously you're a little better on that physically defensive side, but overall that's going to be a quite good amount of mixed bulk for an offensive Pokemon that's as fast as this thing is. 101 speed, pretty good. You're going to outspeed a lot of those base 100 mons, which is quite nice. It's not going to be blazing any new trails with a crazy speed tier, but it's definitely a usable speed tier. It's going to be a great speed tier for a Scarfer because you're outspeeding all those base 100s, even if they get up to +1. Things like Mew and whatnot in competitive play we have seen a lot of use. There's so many base 90, 95, and 100s out there, so this is going to be right where you want to be outspeed all those things. 121 special attack is quite good as well. Just definitely something that allows it to click powerful attacks. And again, that bulk isn't amazing, but 85, 97 on the physical side at the very least is more than usable. 81 attack stat also not terrible, but you're probably not going to be using it all that often, to be completely honest with you. But just overall, average to slightly below average bulk overall, but maybe decent on the physical side. Good special attack stat, and a speed tier that, while it's not amazing, definitely is a useful place to exist within the metagame. Taking a look at this thing's notable moves, it does have a pretty nice move pool here we're going to take a look at. Notably, its go-to stabs will be Thunderbolt and Earth Power, but it also gets Axe to Volt Switch. Discharge, if you like that paralyzed chance a little extra. Gets Flash Cannon as well for some coverage, Power Jump for some coverage. Has access to screen support as well as Spikes and Stealth Rock, so this thing can be a menace on the utility front. Volt Switch, like I previously mentioned, is an excellent move as well on those kinds of utility sets. Gets some physical moves as well. Things like Earthquake, Wild Charge are in there if you wanted to run stabs, and Body Press is not a bad move because you have that 97 base power, but overall I think your best option is going to be to stick with the powerful special attacks, Earth Powers, Thunderbolts of the world, Volt Switch, as well as your hazard moves, and your just ability to set hazards is going to be, and you set utility moves is going to be what really set Sandy Shocks apart as far as being a useful Pokemon in competitive play. So those are the moves that you're going to want to keep an eye on. Taking a look at some pros and cons, I'm going to change up the order here. I think this is going to be a better way to break these Pokemon down. First up, you got to obviously, we talk about a good offensive stab combination. Electric and ground is a very solid stab combination. The electric types that switch into ground moves are going to be able. The electric types that switch into opposing electrics won't want to switch into ground types, which is going to be quite useful. So you're going to be in a nice little spot there. Unfortunately, that does leave you walled by grass types pretty hardcore, and this Pokemon doesn't get a way to work around that ability, but you're going to want to be careful. So you're going to want to be careful of that when you're prepping around it. Like we talked about, it's got a great utility move pool, things like Stealth Rock and Spike support, Screen support, Volt Switch, and like we talked about, it exists at a decent speed tier. That's going to be quite helpful to that when you're at that 101 speed, you're going to outspeed all those base 90 through 100s that are so common in the metagame. and will allow you to really, you know, catch some things that you need to be catching with this Pokemon. Now, Sandy Shocks is, like we talked about, loses the valuable Steel typing of Magneton. Steel typing being arguably the best type in the game and definitely the best defensive type in the game. It also has several very common weaknesses, namely things like water and ice and ground types. All are very common offensive attacks to be clicking that you're going to be in a situation where you're going to need to not be able to take those hits, especially when your bulk is okay-ish, but average at best, probably, honestly. So you're going to want to be careful of that. Like I talked about, underwhelming bulk, it's average at best, and on the physical side, maybe you're slightly okay, but overall your bulk is nothing to write home about, especially when you don't have recovery, and you are a faster Pokemon, so you're probably going to want to make use of that speed, so you won't be investing a whole lot in your bulk while you're at it. Taking a look at a first set that I think you guys could be utilizing, a Scarf Pivot set. Now this set could be substituted for a Choice Specs if you wanted to go with more of a Powerhouse Breaker type role. I think that could be viable as well, coming off that 121 special attack set. We're going to go ahead and boost our special attack and our speed. Now overall, I think you're usually going to want to run a Timid Nature. Like I talked about, you're going to want to make sure you're outspeeding those base 100s, even if they're running Scarfs, for example. But if you're not as worried about that, or if you're in a metagame where you don't think there's a lot of base 100 speeds running around running Scarfs, or if you just don't really care because of the way your team is set up, the rest of your team handles them well, then maybe you can run that Modest Nature and get some extra power in there. Overall, though, I think on a Choice Scarf set, Timid will make more sense for most teams. We're going to have that Photosynthesis ability that unfortunately not going to be very easy to take advantage of that. But in a world, for example, where you're able to run this on a Sun team, could get that little extra bit of boost there as well. Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, Earth Power will kind of be the no-brainers, and then the last spot is up to you, Power Gem or Flash Cannon. Based on the coverage you want, neither of them really achieves any coverage that you weren't hitting with your stabs anyways, but overall, just, you know, it's a chance to hit, like, I guess if you wanted to hit, like, ice types, but both of them kind of do that job. So if you wanted to find another way to have a coverage move here, you also could run, for example, a screen support move here or a Scarf Rocker here. That is a little more niche, maybe not the most recommended or ideal thing, but in a world where you felt like you didn't need another coverage move, which you very well might not with this Pokemon, Electric plus Ground achieves pretty great coverage. The only thing you're not hitting is grass types, and Power Gem and Flash Cannon aren't helping you solve that problem. So in that situation, you know, you might want to find maybe a filler move that could be a little more helpful in niche situations like a Stealth Rock or a Spikes or maybe a Scarf Reflect or a Scarf Light Screen to get a sweeper in from there. Could be another option as well. Again, like I said, this set could be substituted for a Spec set, in which case I'd almost certainly recommend running a Timid Nature because your Specs will be boosting your special attack and you want to make sure you're outspeeding all those 90, 95, 100s, which you wouldn't be if you were running a Modest Nature with a Specs. The next set I want to suggest is more of a utility attacker set, so we're going to try to make use of that utility move pool we've talked about. We're going to run the exact same investments. This time we're definitely going to run Timid like I talked about because we're not getting that Scarf boost. We really want to make sure we're outspeeding all those Pokemon. We're going to run Leftovers and try to get some extra recovery in here. You could definitely run like a Berry, for example, might be helpful, or, you know, like I don't think you'd run a Boost Your Energy, I suppose, but I can think of like definitely a Berry being helpful here as well. For moves, we're going to make sure we still have our 2 stab combinations so we can keep up our offensive pressure in Thunderbolt and Earth Power. And then we're also going to consider running Volt Switch here. I think most Sandy Shocks set will probably go Thunderbolt, Earth Power, Volt Switch, Stealth Rock, and that'll be like a hazard set and pivot out and click attacks for the rest of the fight, for example. But if you wanted to try to fit Spikes in somewhere, you definitely could do that, and that's why I gave you kind of a pick 2 of 3, Volt Switch, Spikes, and Stealth Rock. If you didn't want to worry about pivoting and you really wanted to have that extra hazard game, you could, for example, run Spikes and Stealth Rock on this set. I think that's probably a little suboptimal for this Pokemon. Volt Switch is just such a good move, but for example, if you wanted to run Spikes because maybe you have Stealth Rock somewhere else in your team and you just wanted a Spike stacker, you could run Volt Switch and then you can run Spikes in that last spot, and that would be very viable as well, I think. So it depends a little bit on your team composition and what your team need. That's just kind of the nature of these utility attackers, is they kind of, you know, if you have a Stealth Rocker somewhere, they can maybe do a different utility, or if they need to be the one running the Stealth Rocks, they can do that, or the Spikes, or the Pivot. So you have those options all as well. I think this is definitely going to be a very good set, and between these two, I think Sandy Shocks has a lot of potential to make a splash in the metagame. Overall, I want to talk about some team options. Offensive Mons that appreciate hazard support will really appreciate that utility attacker set, and that's going to be very appreciated. And then Pivot Cores that appreciate ground type teammates are pretty nice. If you're afraid of what's cool about this Pokemon is it can click Volt Switch, but it can also come in on opposing Volt Switches. So that's a little bit of a unique niche that not a ton of Pokemon occupy. The only other ones are, because the thing is Stunfisk doesn't get Volt Switch, so the only other ones would be other Volt Absorb Pokemon. That's a little bit of a cool niche that it occupies, so it's a cool part of the pivot core if you're expecting, especially in a singles match, a lot of pivot moves to be clicked. Sandy Shocks could be able to shine in that particular setting. Now, opposing ground types will pose a big threat to this, like I talked about. Furthermore, opposing grass types, I should have also written here, opposing grass types are a big problem. Now, the one nice thing about Sandy Shocks is when opposing grass type touches the field, even though you can't hit it with your stabs, you can always Volt Switch out. And so that makes that problem a little less mitigated. Now, the problem with opposing ground types, to be specific to what I wrote here, is that opposing ground types stop you from Volt Switching out. Earth Power still can do a decent chunk to those Pokemon, but if it's not killing, the opposing Earthquakes might do a lot more than you want them to. Furthermore, especially bulky Pokemon are going to be a big problem. This Pokemon has a decent special attacks. That 121 is pretty good, but it's not amazing. It's not a wall breaker by any stretch unless you're running specs, so really bulky special walls will be a really big problem. Something like a Blissey and Chansey just genuinely does not care about Sandy Shocks attacks, but so in that situation, Volt Switch ends up being very helpful, because if you know that the special wall is coming in, you can get a little bit of chip on it with a Volt Switch, get your butt out of there, bring in something that actually threatens what's on the field, keep your offensive pressure up. Overall, I think this is an interesting take on a Pokemon like Stunfisk, for example. Stunfisk has it's not unviable, but it definitely has never shown out in competitive formats, and I think Sandy Shocks is a really nice way to kind of see if this Electric Ground combination now with access to Volt Switch and all these utility moves has the potential to shine, which I think honestly it does. It's a cool combination of what it's got going on. Okay bulk, good power, okay speed, great move pool. I think there's just a lot going on here that this Pokemon has a chance to fit in to a very wide number of teams and just be kind of a great Glumon for a lot of different teams as a pivot and a hazard setter, and especially an offensive mon with good speed. So I'm definitely excited to see and this Sandy Shocks in use, see what it can do. Let me know what you guys think of Sandy Shocks down in the comment section below. Let me know if I missed anything or what you guys think about certain Sandy Shocks sets, for example. Also, let me know down in the comment section below what Pokemon you guys want to see next. I want to make sure that I'm making videos for the Pokemon that you guys want to see. Right now I'm trying to rip through all these new forms, but we'll see how many of them I can get through before my voice completely gives out. Make sure to join that Discord link down in the description below. You can ask me any questions there. You can join our competitive Pokemon community where we can have conversations about these Pokemon. And we also have our draft league where we'll be able to draft these Pokemon in a draft league style competitive Pokemon format. Have some really fun battles with some really high level players there as well, including yours truly. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a comment, rate, subscribe, like, all that good stuff, guys. It just really helps me stay motivated, and I really appreciate that you guys are enjoying the content I'm putting out for you guys. It's all about me just wanting to make videos that help players like you be the best competitive battlers they can be and just as knowledgeable as possible. Makes me really happy when people are like, wow, these videos are really helpful. It really makes my day, guys. So make sure that you guys, if you do feel that way and want to support the channel, it would be very appreciated. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Krakenation out.